do that. We're not going to use them right away, but we will actually get onto the Cash Course website and do some things on there a little bit later. And then also, one of the handouts that I gave you is there's a pre-test on one side and a post-test on the other. They're just 5 questions. So if you have not done the pre-test questions, do those real quick as we get started. And then after the workshop is over, you'll do the post-test questions too. And if anybody needs a pen, let me know. I have some extras. Okay, so the yellow handout that I gave you is the PowerPoint slides that we have. So everything that we have that you'll see up here today is on your handouts. So you guys have that information. You can take notes if you want. Can you guys see that okay with the light on? I think it makes it real dark in here. Yes? Okay. We'll leave it this way. There you go. You're welcome. Okay, so you guys may have heard us mention the Cash Course program before, maybe in one of your midterm meetings, or if you guys have ever come in to use our computer lab, it's one of the things that you can do on our computers. You actually can access it from anywhere though. You don't have to use it just on our computers. It is a website, and we have registered MSSU as a group on the website, which gives you access to it. So we're going to talk a little bit about financial goals today, and then I'm going to show you some different things that you can do on the Cash Course website, because there are a lot of really beneficial pieces of this website. There's a lot of good information. There's courses that you can take. There are worksheets that you can use for budgeting. There's videos on there. There's all kinds of information. So no matter what your goals are financially or what things you're struggling with financially, there's probably something on Cash Course that can be beneficial for you guys. Okay, so a couple things. Really, I've kind of talked about this already, but kind of the purpose of this workshop, we try and focus one of our workshops every semester on something related to money or finances, because that's a big struggle for a lot of students, and it's a really valuable skill to have as an adult, to be able to manage your money well. So some of the things that you will get out of this workshop are just recognizing the value of what being in control of your finances can do for you. You're going to see the wealth of information that's on the Cash Course site that you guys can access. Practice tips for managing your money during college. I'll show you guys where you can find that information. And then they have, part of the Cash Course website is called the Budget Wizard, where you can actually go in and do a budget. You can plan a budget for a month beforehand, and then as the month goes, you can keep track of your expenses, and it will help you look at your budgeted expenses compared to your actual expenses, kind of let you know where you're doing as far as managing your money. Okay, have any of you guys ever heard of the SMART method for setting a goal? Okay, one of you, a couple of you. Okay, and you guys will probably hear this in more places than just here today, but because one of the things we're going to talk about today is setting financial goals. And so first I just want to talk about the SMART model. There are a couple things that you need to think about when you're setting a goal for yourself. And this is whether you're setting a financial goal or any other type of goal. If you want to make sure that you're going to reach your goal, you can use the SMART model when you're setting that goal for yourself. And the first thing it talks about is specific, meaning that when you set a goal for yourself, you need to be specific about it. So as an example, since we're talking about money today, if you're going to set a money goal, let's say you decided that you want to save more money. Instead of just setting a goal of, instead of setting a goal of, I want to save money, you should actually be a little bit more specific about it. So if there's something specific you want to save that money for, maybe you could say, I want to save enough money to go on a spring break trip this year. Or, I want to save $500 by the end of the year. Be as specific with it as you can. Measurable, this can kind of play into the specifics as well. But again, instead of just saying, I want to save money, think about how much you want to save or what you're trying to accomplish. So if you want to go on a spring break trip and you know it's going to cost you $1,000, it's measurable if you put that money value on it. So you can say, I want to save enough money to go on a spring break trip. How am I going to measure that? I'm going to measure that because $1,000 is my amount. So when I get to $1,000, I know that I've met my goal. The next thing is attainable. And this is just something that you want to kind of think about when you're setting your goal. Is this something that you can actually do? And I think attainable and realistic kind of go hand in hand. But it's probably not realistic. It wouldn't be realistic for me to say, considering it's now November, I want to save $10,000 by Christmas. That's not really attainable or realistic for me. So make sure when you're setting a goal for yourself that it is something that you can attain, that it's possible to do, and that it's realistic to do in whatever time frame you set for yourself. And then time sensitive. So it can be really beneficial to also give yourself a timeline towards meeting your goal. So again, if we're talking about saving money, maybe you want to save for that spring break trip. You kind of have that time frame set because you know when spring break is. So if that's the way you're doing it, that's the time frame for you. If it's something that's not necessarily tied to a certain time of year, but maybe you have a goal of putting $1,000 aside for emergencies, give yourself a time frame to do that. Say maybe you want to do that within a year or 6 months or whatever works for you. So just remembering the SMART method and kind of keeping those things in mind when you're setting a goal for yourself can be beneficial. Okay, so we're going to talk just real briefly too about short-term and long-term goals, because you guys probably have some of both of these. Again, if you're looking at saving money to go on a spring break trip, that's probably going to be a short-term goal for you. Whereas if you were trying to save money to buy your first house, probably that's going to be more of a long-term item for you to be saving for. But when I say the word short-term goal, what kind of time frame do you guys think of? What do you think would be a short-term goal as far as saving money or doing something financial? A year, okay.
Short-term, 6 months.
6 months, okay. I think 6 months to a year is pretty practical for a range for a short-term goal, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that exact amount. Okay. So this has some examples of short-term goals. These may be things that you guys are working towards as students right now. They may be not realistic for you, but some of you may be interested in, like we've talked about, going on a spring break trip. Some of you may want to buy a new smartphone or tablet or some sort of electronic device that's going to either help you in school or it's just something that you want personally. Study abroad. Is anybody in here thinking about studying abroad? Okay, we have a couple. I think 3 hands I saw. I think one of the great things about Missouri Southern is there are a lot of opportunities for you to study abroad if that's something that you're interested in. I really wish I would have done something like that when I was in college. I didn't ever do that though. But there are a lot of opportunities here, but it can be expensive to do that. So if that's something you're interested in, hello, okay. If that's something you're interested in, you need to be thinking of that as a goal for yourself, because you will need to save up some money for that. There are some scholarships and programs available to help you pay for that financially here, but it probably is going to be a fairly big expense for you. So think about that. If that's something you're interested in, how are you going to, is that a goal that you've set for yourself, and how are you going to work towards that? Some of you who live on campus may be interested in moving off campus, and depending on where you go, whether or not you live with roommates, a lot of different variables, that can possibly be more expensive than living on campus. So those are just some examples of what a short-term goal might be for you guys. Does anybody have a short-term goal that they know they definitely have for themselves, that they, an example they'll share?
Trip to Florida or Versailles.
Okay, very good. Are you doing that for spring break or just?
July, August.
Okay, very good. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm going to Miami.
Okay, very good. All right. Okay, here's some examples of some long-term goals, and you guys, again, these may be things that you're interested in, they may not be, but there are lots of long-term goals that you might have. Moving to a new city, so some of you may be considering moving somewhere different once you get your degree. That can be expensive. Just moving by itself can be expensive. But if you're moving to somewhere where the cost of living is higher than here, which is just about everywhere, because this is a pretty inexpensive place to live, you need to think about that as far as a long-term goal. How are you going to afford to live in a place that's more expensive than here? Going to graduate school. Some of you in here are probably thinking about that, or in the future you may think about that. One thing, and we're not going to talk about this in a lot of detail today, but graduate school, your financial aid options are very different than what they are in undergraduate. There are no Pell Grants for graduate school. So you're looking at more than likely loans if you need help paying for that. Or you could possibly get a graduate assistantship, which is a program where you work for the university where you're going to school and they pay your tuition for working for them. But that's something to think about if you're interested in graduate school, because graduate school tuition is higher and there are not Pell Grants. So just keep that in mind if that's a goal for you. If it is, then it's probably a good idea to start doing some long-term financial planning for that now. Joining the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps. Some of you may be interested in doing something like that. I do believe, I don't know a lot about either of these programs, but I do believe that you get a living stipend for working for either of these organizations. But again, it might be something that you need to do some planning for to be able to do that. I'm sorry?
You get a what?
Like a stipend, or I'm not sure exactly what they call it, but living expenses are a stipend, which is, it's not exactly a salary, but it's money that you're given for doing a certain job or activity. So. Okay, you may want to travel. I know, Mariana, you mentioned that you would travel if you had $10,000. So some of you may want to do that while you're in school or after you're in school. Again, that's something that might need planning. Or an internship. Is anybody in here thinking about an internship at any point? A couple of you. Sometimes if you're lucky, you can find a paid internship, which is always great. Sometimes internship opportunities are not paid. So if that's something you're thinking about, you need to also think about if you're offered an unpaid internship, will you be able to do that financially? So think about these things in the long term. Can be beneficial for you guys. Okay. Here are 4 steps that you guys can take in setting your goal and steps that you can take to reach your goal. So there are 4 here. First is determine the actual cost of your goal. So whatever it is that you're working towards, when you first set this goal for yourself, you need to figure out what's this going to cost me. And this may be something that you can't know for sure. Maybe moving to a new city, you may not be able to know exactly what that's going to cost you, but do some estimating, do some research to find out what that's going to cost you so you know exactly what you need to be working towards. Okay, the second step is to divide the total cost by the number of months that you have to save for your goal. So, if you wanted to save, I'm going to make it easy because math is not my strong subject, but let's say you want to save $1,200 in 12 months. That's $100 a month. So do the math and figure out whatever time frame you're giving yourself to reach your goal, how much are you going to have to save every month so you have a good idea of what you need to be doing month to month to reach your goal. Step 3 is to ask yourself if you can realistically do that each month. If you want to save a big amount of money, but you're working or living on a small income, is it going to be realistic to save the amount you want to, or do you need to adjust either the amount you want to save or the period of time that you have to save it? And then step 4 is ask yourself what you're willing to give up to reach your goal. If you go to Starbucks once or twice a week, are you willing to give that up to reach the goal that you want? Or, there's lots of things, but just look at your budget every month and ask yourself, what things am I willing to give up to get to my goal? Okay. Here are just a couple of facts that I thought were kind of interesting about money, and there were 25,000 people who answered these 2 questions, and the first one said that 70% of the people who answered this survey said that they have difficulty covering their expenses and paying bills month to month. So there are a lot of people out there that are struggling financially. Hopefully, as college students, you guys can develop a good sense of financial security while you're here, learn as much as you can about budgeting your money, and you won't be in that situation. And then the second fact is that the majority of Americans, it doesn't give a number for this, but it does say the majority of Americans do not have a fund set aside. They call it a rainy day fund for emergencies. I think of a rainy day fund as like fun money. But basically, they don't have, the majority of Americans do not have money set aside for an emergency. So if your car breaks down or your heater quits working or you have a medical emergency, you may or may not have money set aside for that, but a lot of Americans don't. So doing some of the things that we're going to talk about today, using the resources on Cash Course, can help you get to that point where you do have some money set aside in case you have an emergency. Okay, so we're going to take a little quiz real quick. You guys can write these down, you don't have to turn it in or anything. But I just want you to take a few minutes and answer these 6 true or false questions. Okay, so did anybody answer true to all 6 questions? Okay, here it says what's your diagnosis, that's how they talk about it. If you had 5 or more true responses, then according to Cash Course you are fiscally fit, which means you're doing well, very well money-wise. 3 to 4 true responses, you're doing okay, but you could use a little bit more exercise financially. And then 1 to 2 true responses, they say you need to be on a financial diet. So again, this is just to kind of give you guys an idea of where you are. And really, whether you answered none of them true, all of them true, you guys can always learn more about managing your finances. Sometimes you may feel like this is a really tough area and that there's not a lot of way that you can do some of the things we're talking about, but just hang in there if you're in that instance and know that your goals are possible if you work towards them and you have a lot of good knowledge and resources at your fingertips. Okay, so now we're actually going to get into the Cash Course website. And so I think you guys are probably all logged onto your computer. So if you would, the website is right here, it's just cashcourse.org. So if you guys would all go ahead and go to that website, and this is what the page should look like when it comes up for you. And to be able to access the website, you do have to register. It's really simple. You put in your name and your email address, and you set a password for yourself. So if you guys all would go ahead and click the register now under the student section, it will take you to a screen that looks like this, and you just put in your information. There's it's going to take you through about 3 steps, and then you guys will all be registered. And if any of you guys are not having trouble, let us know. Get to where you need to be. Once you put in your name and your email address and you set your password, it does bring up a screen for you to accept their terms and agreements. You just click on accept and then you should be registered. Okay, so once you guys get logged in, this is the screen that you should see when you initially log in. And so from here, you can access anything that there is on Cash Course. And I just want to show you guys a couple of the different options. Like I said, there is a lot of information on here. And so we don't have time to look at nearly all of it today, but I want to get into some of it so you guys are aware of it, can see some of what's out there, and just figure out how to navigate around this website a little bit. So, just a little bit about Cash Course. Like I mentioned, this is a free website, so you guys won't ever have to pay to use it. Since we have registered for it, you guys as students can log on at any time. As far as I know, your log on never expires or anything like that. So you guys can access this as long as you want. And if you look over on the left-hand side, this is all the different topics that they cover on the website. And so I just want to go through them real quickly and kind of show you what's under each section. You can, if you just point to the section, it's going to pop up everything that, all of the different topics that you can look at under that. So as you can see, if you go to Money 101, these are just kind of your basics. So if you feel like you really don't have any idea when it comes to financial planning where to even start, this is going to be a good resource for you. There's information on banking, budgeting, credit and debt, insurance, and saving and goal setting. So if that's what you're looking for, that's information that you need or you think will be helpful for you, then that's the section that you want to go to. Okay? If you just slide on down, paying for education. This one would probably be a big one for a lot of you guys, because paying for education, as we all know, it's expensive to get an education, and it can be difficult to figure out how exactly to work your budget when you're a student. So again, this section has a lot of different resources for you. The first thing that's on there I'd like to point out is the graduate and professional degrees. So I talked a little bit about how financial aid is very different for graduate school and for professional degrees beyond a bachelor's degree. If that's something that you're thinking about, that's in your future, definitely check out that link there and the information that they have there so you can start planning for that moving forward. Projecting expenses, so especially for those of you that this is your first year, this might be a good tool for you to use. I think it would be good for anybody. But projecting expenses, this is going to help you look at what's it going to cost me to be a student. Okay? Repaying student loans. So as you move forward, some of you may or may not be taking out student loans. I'm assuming that some of you are. If you are, you need to think now about paying those off in the future. Student loans are a great resource, and I'm glad that they're there because they enable a lot of students to go to school. The thing that I don't like about student loans is that it is very easy to click that button and say, I accept that loan that you're giving me. And as you know, you guys are students, so you've been through this process. Maybe you've accepted a loan. You know that process is very easy. You fill out your FAFSA, they say, here, we're going to give you this money. You click accept, and it's yours. It's very easy to do that. Please always remember when you do that, that's money that you're paying back in the future. Now, if you're getting Pell Grants, that's different, but just be very cautious and very careful when you're accepting the loans of how much you're accepting. I always try and encourage students, don't take out any more in loans than you absolutely have to get through school. And I know that students have tuition and books and living expenses, so you may need the full amount, and that's okay. That's what it's there for. Just be aware that 6 months after you graduate or 6 months after you stop school, whether you graduate or not, you start paying those loans back, okay? So just be aware of that, and then check out the repaying student loans. There are a lot of different options for repaying your student loans. There are different payment plans you can be on. There are hardship considerations, so if you become unemployed or you have some sort of emergency, they can work with you, but just be aware of what to expect once you're out of school. There's information on repaying student loans, and then just information on student loans in general, and then ways to pay. So it talks about a lot of those things here under that resource. Okay. The next section is making purchases. I have not looked in a lot of detail at this section, but there's information on transportation, housing, and shopping and spending. So if that's an area where you guys are interested in getting some information, check out that area. Okay, working and earning. How many of you guys are working while you go to school? It's like most of you, more than half of you. Okay. A lot of students do. If you're a student who you would like to have a job while you go to school, but you haven't been able to find one, or you haven't gotten out there and started looking, there's information on finding a job. One thing I always encourage students to do, if you can work an off-campus job, consider that option. There is always a lot of demand for on-campus jobs, but if that's something you're interested in, definitely apply for it. The great thing about campus jobs is that they're going to work around your school schedule. And if you work for someone on campus, they're going to be flexible with you. They know that if you're a student worker, you're here to go to school primarily, and then work secondarily. So check out that option if you can. Do any of you guys work on campus already? Yep, a couple of you. Good deal. If you guys are looking for a job, definitely check out that option. You can work up to 20 hours as a student worker, so you can't work full-time, but you can work up to 20 hours. So this has information on finding a job, types of work, wages, and benefits. Okay, money and relationships. This section talks a little bit about, like it says, on the relationship side of things. Because sometimes, if you're in a relationship, I've read and heard before that money is the number one thing that couples fight about. I don't know if that's true. That's probably true in my world. But just be aware that your relationships are very, well, I don't know how I want to say this, but money and relationships don't always mix well. So just be aware of that if you're in a relationship, then you need to think about your finances and your money from a relationship perspective too. And this has information too about friends, family, and money, because sometimes the things that our friends or our family want us to do can affect us negatively, financially. Maybe your friends want you to go out with them every Friday night, or maybe your friends are expecting you to do things that financially you don't really feel like you're able to do. This section talks about how do you handle some of those things and what are some options you can consider if you find yourself in that situation. Okay, solving problems. Unfortunately, as with anything, you can run into problems when it comes to your finances. And this section talks about some problems that you might run into financially. And some of you guys may have experienced some of these already. But the first thing on there is emergencies. So it's a really, really good idea to have some money set aside for emergencies. Like I said, you never know when your car is going to break down. When you might have had to go to the doctor and you didn't expect that as expense. Fraud, hopefully none of you guys ever experienced this. Has anybody ever experienced any kind of identity theft or fraud financially that you've had to deal with? Yeah, it is. I've been pretty fortunate, but I did one time have somebody get a hold of my credit card number and bought like a $10,000 tractor of some sort on eBay with my credit card number. It was crazy and all kinds of weird expenses. Fortunately, I look at my credit card statement regularly, so I saw it right away, and I was able to resolve it quickly. If you're dealing with something like identity theft, that can be much, much worse. So the number one thing I would tell you guys under fraud is to make sure that you're monitoring your accounts or your credit cards regularly. Because if you see something right away that you know you didn't spend that money, then it's going to be much easier to resolve. Like I said, I was able to resolve mine quickly because I saw it right away, and it was taken care of. But just be aware of those things, and hopefully you guys won't ever have to worry too much about that, but that can be a nightmare.
LifeLock.
LifeLock, I've heard that. I don't know exactly what it does or if it works. And then the last thing on there is income gaps. And you guys may find that at some point you are unemployed, whether it be you quit a job or you are laid off, or for whatever reason, if you are going a period of time without an income. There's some resources there for you as well. Okay, financial tools. This, if you guys would all go ahead and just click on the financial tools link, it's going to bring up this page right here. And there are a lot of really great things under this section. One thing I want to just take a minute and show you, the first thing on here is the budget wizard. So you guys are welcome to click into this right now if you want to. You do, and I'm not sure why this is, but you do have to create a second username and password if you want to use the budgeting tool. So you guys don't have to do that right now if you don't want to. I'm going to show it to you because I did a sample budget on here to show you guys. If I can find my sticky note. decide to use the budget wizard, this is what it's going to look like. And like I said before, this allows you to go in and set up a budget. It will let you, the first thing it will have you do is project your expenses. So let's say you want to do this for the month of December. It's going to give you the basic categories that you're going to have in your budget, and then it gives you some other categories. So if you have some expenses that are unique to you, you can put those in as well. So I did a sample one, and I'll show that to you. Okay. This doesn't move around the screen very well, but I'll show you the best I can. So as a sample budget, I put in all the expenses that I would expect a lot of students have. So you can put in basically everything: childcare, eating out, gas, groceries, work. It also will have you put in your income. So you can see down here, I have put in 2 expenses, one for working and then one for student loans. And then it also asks you to put in information on savings if you're saving for something. So I put in a long-term and a special savings. So if you have something, like maybe you're saving up right now for Christmas, that could be your special savings. Or if you're saving up because you want to study abroad, that can be your long-term. So it will let you put in all of these categories. And then once you do that, you can click here and enter your actual expenses. So let's say you want to do this for December, you've never done a budget before. You can go and start working on this now and project what you think your income and your expenses will be for December. And then once the month gets here, you can enter your actual expenses. And this is the screen that it gives you to enter your expenses. So you're just going to select your category, put in the amount that you actually spent, and click add item. And I'm not going to do that because I already did that before to set up the example. And then it will let you compare. So for this example, I put in a total income of $1,900. I put in total expenses of $1,850, and then including your savings. But it actually put me a little bit over once I put my savings in. So, and that may be what happens for you. You guys may find that your expenses are higher than your income, but this will allow you to see that and then budget differently. There's also this tab here for charts that will show you your expenses by category. So you've got your income and your planned expenses, and then everything else here. Okay. And then you can print your budget, you can send it by email, you can do whatever you want with it. Or you can just save it. It will save it in here for you. So anytime you go in and sign into Cash Course and then go into the budget wizard, that will still be there for you. You can export it. I have not tried this option. I'm not sure if you, okay, it's going to export it in Excel. So if you want to do it that way, you can do it in Excel too. Okay. If you've gone into the budget wizard, you can just close out of it. It's going to take you right back to where you left off in Cash Course. So we will go back there. Okay. One other thing I want to show you. Like I said, we don't have time to go through every single one of these tools, but I do want to show you a couple things on here. One is the financial calculators, and they have a bunch of them. So depending on what your goal is or what financial situation you find that you're in, there may be a calculator on here that can help you. And so one I wanted to just show you an example real quick is how long will it take to pay off my credit card? And this will help you figure out, based on how much you owe, your percentage rate, what your payments are, and then if you pay extra payments, how quickly you can pay that off. So you may be in a situation where you have some money in credit card debt, and maybe a goal for you is to pay that off. Well, this would be a great tool for you, because maybe you've been making minimum payments, but you've decided you want to put an extra $10 a month towards that. You can use this tool. It's going to tell you how much more quickly you can pay it off. So I'm just going to show you guys how this works. We'll run an example real quick. Let's say you have $500 on your credit card, 18%. I think a lot of credit cards are actually higher than that, but we'll leave it as that for the example. This has a minimum payment percentage. I don't know if 4% is the standard for most credit cards, but that's what it defaults to, so I'm just going to leave it as that. let's say you've been paying $10 as your minimum payment, but you decide that you want to pay $20 instead, so you put in 20 here. Some credit cards will allow you to skip your December payment because of Christmas, so it gives you the option to say yes or no there. Oh, I'm sorry, I needed to leave this as 10. Leave your minimum payment, whatever your minimum payment is here, and then if you're going to pay extra, you put it here. So let's say you want to pay an extra $10. You can have it displayed monthly or yearly, and then you just click submit, and it takes just a minute. But it shows you how long, and it tells you up here, it's going to take 27 payments or 2.2 years to pay that off. So I just wanted to show you guys that calculator as an example. And then it, okay, right up here, tells you how much interest you're paying on that money over that time. Okay. So I just wanted to show you guys that real quick. Like I said, there are lots of calculators there, so you guys may find one that is beneficial to you. There's loans, work, savings. Okay. And then, one other thing, I'm just going to show you guys this real quick. I don't have this. Oh, I want to show you the worksheets real quick. Because I don't know about you, just depending on how you guys are, banking a budget on the computer may work for you. I'm the type of person that I like to have it on paper. That's just the way that I prefer it. You guys may be that way too. There is a whole list of different worksheets that you can access on Cash Course. And so, I don't know if there's just a plain budget one. There's a study abroad budget, there's a savings goal. So there's lots of different worksheets, and you can open them up there, PDFs, but you can actually type into them. So if you want to type it on the computer, you can do that, and then you can print it out, or I believe you can save it as well. So there's that option for you too. Okay, one thing I'm going to have you guys do as an activity is an actual quiz.